growing up and the stuff that I was dealing with right then and there at CalArts, working in an environment where I didn't even realize the woman was calling me a nigga. So that's what got me through, and they questioned my work, but they didn't question it in a bad way, they just questioned it. So I think that here being a black woman born and raised in America, that is my tradition. I am a guru. I will continue to teach it. I will continue to teach children to know that dance is an outlet to express yourself where you don't have to run to the streets. You don't have to run into a man or a woman's arms. Either way, you can come and you can express yourself and be healthy and whole through movement. And it is something that healed me in a lot of different areas of growing up here through a lot of different types of dance. But right now, that's what I'm doing here in the Bay Area. And so I think that when you explore what you're exploring and wanting to break out of a tradition, you got to create your own legacy at some point and be okay with wanting to do that and know where it comes from. That's it.
Hi. My name is Titania. I'm sorry, I came in a little bit late. I'm actually with Danny Kalanduyan. I've been working with him for the past 11 years, and we both have our 501c3 together. When I heard the question earlier asked of Danny about Filipino Americans who were born in this country, but their parents or their grandparents were immigrants and they came from more of a Catholic tradition, I all of a sudden understood a little bit more what this meeting is about. And I've just been bubbling in my mind all this time. But what the first thing that I thought was, well, the idea here is that, as Danny said, the music of the Southern Philippines is not Muslim music. It existed long before any religion from other countries came to the Philippines. It's an indigenous music. And as I had explained to the other artists when we met last week, I was raised in Alaska, and my mother was born in the Philippines, but I was raised with indigenous people. I first learned Eskimo music and dance as a child growing up in the 60s during the Civil Rights Movement. So it's, lots of things are all mixed up there. I came to the Bay Area because I wanted to know more. And one of the things I found out after working with Danny is that so many Filipino Americans don't have any idea about the indigenous music of the Philippines. And it was interesting when you were talking about legacy, because I'm not interested in legacy, because it feels like for so many Filipino Americans born in this country, you go to your parents and you ask them, they don't know. They don't have anything to give you. And I'm not looking to give something to another generation. I'm just trying to find out more about what is it that was indigenous to the country. Having been raised in Alaska, I know that there's indigenous music and dance everywhere. And knowing that the country the Philippines had been taken over to a large degree by European forces, and then American forces, which is very interesting, because right after the Civil War, when the United States purchased the Philippines from Spain, took over the country, they continued the idea of Jim Crow, and there's a lot of racism in the Philippines, and there's a lot of feeling that people who are indigenous are people who don't have any worth. Because if they had any money, if they had any brains, if they had anything, they would be doing that stuff. They would be coming to the city. And I think that the people who do live in the country, they realize that they have this treasure, and they pass it down from generation to generation. It's one of those things where I think people in the city, after having looked around and said, you know, well, we have this came from the Spaniards, this came from the Americans, but what really came from here, we don't know. And so it's looking back in America and seeing what Danny Kalanduyan has done in the United States that really reinforces something that Danny has said, is that people in the Philippines will not care about their own indigenous culture until they see that Americans care more about it. So that's my only comment. Thank you.
Yeah, can we have just maybe one more comment before we move to the next? Actually, somebody who hasn't spoken, if possible. Okay, well, actually, brief comment from Eric and then Mark.
I wanted to throw out an idea that's come to me through several dance artists of color in San Francisco. And that is sort of not wanting to be identified by your ethnicity, not wanting to participate in festivals that pigeonhole you in some way based on a traditional art form or an ethnic origin. Anyone?
Yeah, you know, for me, I don't consider myself Cambodian. I didn't grow up in Cambodia. I don't consider myself American either, you know, and I practice Brazilian samba, and for me, when I'm interested in Cambodian classical dance, you know, I'm not interested in the Cambodian of it. I'm interested in something that's larger than it, just the Hindu aspect of it. So already there's some tension there, you know, and I do understand artists who are coming at things like that, because, you know, I was going to audition for the San Francisco Ethnic Dance Festival, but you only get 5 minutes, you know, so like, it's like, this is your only venue, but it's kind of almost disrespectful in a way, you know, like 5 minutes, it's like an introduction in Cambodian classical dance. So, you know, I understand that, and, you know, for me, the way that I think of myself as an artist is someone who is embracing of many histories and appreciative of the specificity of each of those histories. You know, whether it's from Cambodia or from Japan, from Brazil, from Africa, you know, I consider my life to be the layering of histories, and I don't think of tradition as something static, as something behind me. I think of tradition as something contemporary, something changing, something breathing, something living. So I really much so sympathize with that feeling.
We'll take one more comment, and then after that we're going to move on to the next part and stretch our legs.
Yeah.
Everybody's so interesting, but I think I wanted to ask Danny a question. Working with all different groups around the United States in Kulandang, there's more to it than just knowing to play the right notes or to make the right movements at the right time. That would have been obvious to you growing up, where you learned all this music. But for people who are just living in San Francisco or Seattle, and they never lived in the Philippines, and their parents never lived in the Philippines, how can they understand all the other things that go into the music, how people relate to each other before the performance starts, how they relate to each other after the performance ends, and how they understand all the values that go into the music? Are you able to get to that place with the groups you work with here in the U.S.? And are there some non-Filipinos who get it?
That's very interesting questions. When I teach the music or dance, I talk about the history of it, the meaning of what we perform, the symbolic interpretation. So, for example, there's this certain song that we don't usually perform it unless there is somebody ill or sick in the family, because we believe that if you play that music, then the spirit will come down and you will be punished if there is no healing ceremony going on. So in other words, it's not that I want the students to learn the proper way of playing the music or proper dance movement, but they have to understand what it means. When are we